Hi guys, and welcome to another video on my channel, and we're just going to be doing a nice quick review of the SJCAM M20. Now I will hold my hand up and say this is a freebie. Gearbest got in touch with me. They'd obviously seen my channel. They do it with a lot of YouTube channels out there, and said, you know, if we send you a product, would you be happy to do a review of it? I said, yep, absolutely, no problem at all, but if it's a rubbish product, I will tell people that it's a rubbish product. So, you know, it's not worth that much to me to have this free stuff sent to me, but obviously it's, you know, a nice thing. I'm always a big fan of action cameras. And that's what we have here. So I'll have a link below if you do want to buy it from Gearbest, by all means, but let's just get everything out of the box for the moment. We'll deal with the unboxing and then we'll do some test footage and everything that we have there. Right, okay, so we have the camera. It already comes, as you can see, in its underwater case. Very GoPro-esque in that respect. Then we've got two other compartments. What we've got in here, we have got USB charge cable. We've got a couple of mounts, interesting looking mounts. I think these are the swivel mounts, so we'll have a look at those in a moment. So that's that compartment there. And then a whole bunch of other mounts here. Now this is looking all really promising, it has to be said. Now I have to admit, I've never owned an SJCAM so far. I've seen plenty of videos. Oh, don't forget the stickers. All important stickers. Okay, can't get the stickers out. Never mind, there are stickers in there. I've never actually owned an SJCAM. Obviously, they've been around for quite a while now. They've kind of had that reputation for a cheap and cheerful action camera that, you know, you buy if you don't want to buy or you can't afford to buy a GoPro, which is understandable. Plenty of people out there, you know, things like the Mobius, for example, cameras like that came out at the time. You know, they were very popular with the radio controlled hobby people because you could spend, you know, 80 or well, less than that, 60 to 80 pounds on a camera, and ultimately what you had was you'd have something that, you know, instead of mounting your GoPro to like an aircraft, you'd put a Mobius camera on it, and if you smashed into something, destroyed the whole thing, you would, you know, you'd be upset, but you wouldn't be as upset as a £350 camera. So you know, I've been one of those people. The Mobius was never a massive, you know, I was never a massive fan of the Mobius, purely on the quality that came out of it compared to something like a GoPro. But likewise, I was too scared of putting a GoPro on an aircraft, certainly a fixed wing aircraft, mainly because I was so bad at piloting them, and had many a crash. Anyway, that's beside the point. So this is $119 on Gearbest at the moment. Obviously, I think you can probably buy it from other places as well, but being that Gearbest sent me this, I better say that. There is a link to them, as I mentioned before. But let's just see what you get in the kit. So as you can see, you don't just get the camera, you get a whole host of stuff, actually, and that's really promising. So you've got your camera, you've got your waterproof case. I'll get it out of the case in a moment. You've then got a whole bunch of mounts. So let's see, we have got just a standard mount there with a little screw on it. We have got what appears to be a tripod adapter. Good, like to see that. And then we've got a reverse tripod adapter, which allows you, well, that's a useful little tool there. That is a 1/4 inch thread to a well, let's face it, let's call it a GoPro mount there, so that's going to be quite useful as well. We've got a standard little adapter there, and again, I need to mention at the moment, I believe that these are all basically GoPro mounts. They're all compatible, so the base part of, for example, the waterproof case, all of this will fit into a normal GoPro mount. Now that is, I wouldn't say it's a genius move by SJCAMs, but it's a very clever move because so many people have these mounts. And more importantly, if you don't have those mounts, they're so readily available. You don't have to buy all the really expensive GoPro ones. You can buy the, you know, the cheap knockoff ones, because ultimately, unless you're doing something really extreme, they're absolutely fantastic for that anyway. So so it's really nice to see that as part of your 120 quid. I mean, you know, if you were to buy all of these mounts alone, these would probably cost you, well, certainly locally, they'd probably cost you, you know, £3 or £4 each, or, you know, if you go on Amazon, you get maybe a bunch of them for about a tenner for a big kit. So it's nice to see that, definitely. Anyway, a couple more standard. That's a kind of a converter, left to right converter. That's another standard one there. Slight extension bar, which is good. Again, these are all very familiar because they're very much like the ones that you get from GoPro. These are just good old-fashioned sticky mounts. More sticky mounts here. That's one of these. Now let's just get this out of the box because I'm intrigued on this one. Okay. Right, so this is a sticky mount, 3M in theory, 3M sticky, but what it's got is it's got a rotation, I believe, he says. Trying to rotate it. Come on. Rotate, there we go. See? So you can rotate that through 90 degrees. So that's quite nice actually. That's not something that I've seen on the GoPro mount. That's certainly something that I would be able to use. So that's quite nice. Let's see, we've got, these are just the standard ones. We've then got the little, let's get that out of the packet as well, why not indeed. This is a little cradle, so this is kind of like the equivalent of the GoPro frame. Nice plastic, so you can actually put it on your belt clip. It's also got, very well thought out there, 1/4 inch thread, so you can mount it to your tripod, and also that slides out so you can actually remove it. So that's quite a nice little thing. You know, quality wise, it's not GoPro quality, but you know, it's not ridiculously bad quality by any means. I'm actually quite impressed by all of that. And then finally, something that is very handy is a bicycle mount, so a handlebar mount basically, or a tube mount. So nothing particularly complicated about that. It does come with a nice rubber inset, so you can put it around you know, your handlebars, and you can put it on your bike and take it out. But all in all, you know, that again, that's, I think that's £15 or £10 if you buy the actual official GoPro one. So it's really good to see that you get a whole host of this stuff free with this camera. So immediately, before I've even turned the damn thing on, I'm actually going to say that this is good value. You know, this is good. This is a £90 camera, I think it is, and you get all of that kit. So that's promising. So with that said, now let's move on to the onto the housing. I'll get the camera out and we'll have a look at that. Okay, so much like GoPro, they have a double seal. So this is slide, which is always a nightmare to get open. Slide, come on. Push that, pull that. I'm doing this wrong. Push that. Ah. Read the little things. Slide, open. Duh. Okay, there we go. Open that, and out comes the camera. Did a little thing. All very nice. Now I have admittedly taken this out of the box and put an SD card in it and charged it, but this is how it comes. You get the lens protector plastic on there. Let's remove that. You also get some, well, you get one on the back there, but I'm not going to remove that because actually that looks quite good. But that's it in size. Now let's just compare it to GoPro's latest. There you go, that's the Hero 5 next to that, so you can see form factor smaller considerably. Probably a little bit smaller than, say, a Hero 4, but certainly smaller than the newer Hero 5. If you look at the profile side of it, again, smaller there. You know, bear in mind that is completely waterproof in this housing, of course. I haven't even turned this on. I might mention GoPro one, but I will be playing around with that soon. But yeah, anyway, getting back to this one in hand. So what have we got? We've got, in terms of features, a very, very plain looking front. We have got 2 LEDs on the front there. We have got micro USB and HDMI output, as well as the micro SD card slot. We've got a plain screen on the background. We've then got couple of up and down buttons, what I believe will be the microphone. That's got a Wi-Fi symbol on it just there, so that's going to be to activate the Wi-Fi. And if we look at the top, we've got an LED indicator, and we've got the on-off there, and the what has a picture of a camera. So I'm assuming that's going to be the shoot mode there. So, you know, nice, well thought, laid out thing. What's interesting is they haven't bothered going the route of going the GoPro form factor. Now actually I think that's probably a good idea, purely for the fact that the new camera, when it came out, the Hero camera was always going to be slightly different in form factor, as it turned out to be. So you know, why be conformist with that? The good thing that they've done though is they've said, well, does it need to be the same size as the GoPro if we're going to be our own thing? And if not, then let's make it so it's actually compatible with GoPro mounts. So I think that's quite clever. Now, before we move on to the actual footage and talking about, you know, the modes and stuff like that on the camera, let's just take a look at this. This is a normal GoPro, so an actual GoPro mount. Now, what I'm intrigued to know is if I grab this here, will this actually fit onto it? Because that would be, frankly, really good. Well, that does, it does sort of fit. I don't know if you can see that, there is a gap. Quite a considerable gap. So there's basically on this, if I slide that out, you've got this groove down the middle, this central location. Now that doesn't slide into the groove on that. It seems to be just a tad bigger. So it does sort of go on. It kind of feels like it's not going to go anywhere too much. So click, it sort of clicks, but I tell you what, I wouldn't want to put that on a car. I certainly wouldn't want to put that on anything moving. You know, it'll hold it. I don't think that's going to go too far if it's just sort of sitting there. But yeah, you certainly wouldn't want to try and use this bracket. So that's this bracket with the GoPro bracket. Now, of course, if you've got GoPro kit, then you don't need to worry about that because of these two prongs here. They're always going to fit on a normal GoPro bracket. So you put a normal GoPro bracket on it, boom, then you use your GoPro mounts. Easy as that. So just something that was quite interesting to me. Whether it was completely compatible, I would be amazed if it was, because of the whole kind of, you know, pattern issue and stuff like that. So yeah, so it's interesting to see that. Whilst we're here, let's just take a look at this this underwater case. Quite nice actually, it has to be said. You've got some rubber back in there. You've got your clamp there. You've got the little springy buttons at the top there. There's no apparent double seal on the inside of that, so how waterproof all of that is, who knows. You have got the other buttons on the side there, but again, you know, from a manufacturing point of view, that's not a cheap piece of kit to put together to make it actually waterproof to save the camera up to any sort of distance. So I think, you know, quality wise, given the price, I mean, again, this is $120. This is pretty damn cheap. I mean, that's what, it's 90 pounds, and I'm trying to think, the cheapest GoPro at the moment, certainly new one, is 250 pounds, the new Session. You know, the old Session I think you can get for about 150 pounds, which admittedly is waterproof out of the box, but doesn't have removable batteries and stuff like that. Speaking of which, let's just have a quick look at that. The batteries, boom, there is a battery in this. Come on. A little label for me to get this out has disappeared. There we go. So that is the battery that you get. Now, I don't think that is the same as a Hero 4 battery in terms of form factor. I will double check. I'm pretty sure it isn't. It does look very similar, it has to be said. But I'll double check that. I'll see in a minute. So we'll switch to an answer on that question right now. And there's the answer to the question. The answer is no. You can see that the contacts are a completely different location, and the battery size, while very, very similar, it has to be said, is different. So no, you're not going to be using your Hero 4 batteries in the SJCAMs. A shame, it has to be said, because I've got so many blooming Hero 4 batteries that would be really useful. And how easy these are going to be to get hold of in the future, not entirely sure. We'll see. But yeah, I mean, it's been out for a while. I think I can probably get one on Amazon. In terms of capacity, these are 3.8 cold camera, 3.8 volt, 900 milliamps, and so that's not massive. I'm just trying to think. Yeah, so these are my Smart Tree ones for the GoPro, and they come in at the same voltage, but they're 1290 milliamps, so slightly bigger. I think that's probably very similar to the standard GoPro size. So yeah. So anyway, that's the comparison. That's the unboxing. You do get a fantastic amount of kit in this little thing, and I have to say, I'm impressed with the packaging. It doesn't feel like a cheap camera by any means. It's been well thought out. It's got a lot of information about it. You know, it's telling me that it's 30 meters waterproof. It's got anti-shake stabilization, the various modes that it can do, which I'll talk about obviously later on down in this video, and all of the detail on the back of it in multi-languages. And also, this is an interesting sign. That to me is a promising thing, because I've been dealing with a lot of Chinese companies, Featech especially with the gimbals, you know, who have developed an app which can only be downloaded on Google, Android. They haven't spent the money on anything on Apple. So it's nice to see that SJCAMs have actually catered for both people, and they give you a nice easy QR code to link to get it. So, you know, all in all, you know, for someone who doesn't actually own or hasn't actually used an SJCAM so far, I'm impressed. I think for the price point, you know, the amount of kit and the quality of the stuff that I'm looking at the moment is really good. So anyway, with that said, let's move on to the camera and we'll get a bit more detail on that. Okay, so now we're done with the unboxing, let's just have a look at this camera in a bit more detail in terms of the menu and the modes. So all we've got to do to turn it on is we press the on button, little blue light comes on. Get a nice little interesting noise. So there's a little speaker inside the camera, and then we can see, so that is the output. You can see it's quite a wide field of view just by putting my hand in front of it immediately. Defaulting into 1080 at 60. Now I have set the time and I've done some things in there, so this may not be exactly as it is out of the box, but basically all we need to do, if we wanted to switch modes, so this is the shoot button. So if I wanted to start filming, I just press that button there. If I want to get to a different mode, so I'm in video mode at the moment, I press the standby button, and that changes, as you can see in the top corner here, that goes into photo mode. If I press what's more, then we get the menu. So let's just have a quick track through the menu. What's really nice to see is it's very comprehensive in terms of the number of features that you've got, and actually some of the settings as well. Again, I'm going to relate to, you know, something like a Mobius camera, which back in the day was about, you know, £80 I think I spent for mine. That didn't even have a screen on it, whereas this has got a really nice, colourful, vibrant screen, you know, easy to see. I mean, obviously this is being shot on a camera, you know, and you guys can make this out as well. Bit of glare, obviously, because it's got a bit of a reflective material on it at the moment, but, you know, all in all, very bright, very vibrant little screen. So let's just shoot through the modes as quickly as possible. So we've got video and photo, we've got playback to see what you've shot, you've got video lapse, which is much like GoPro. That's where it will do a time lapse, but it will create a video for you. You've got slow motion, so if you've got 1080p, you can do 60 frames a second. 720, you can do 120 frames a second, meaning you can do some slow motion shots like that. You've got photo lapse, which is going to be like a time lapse mode. You've got burst mode, where you can take multiple shots at the same, you know, one after the other instantly. Then you've got these interesting modes here. Now, I couldn't find a huge amount of information about all of these. You've got underwater mode, you've got FPV mode, you've got motion detector. Car mode is obviously in terms of using it as a dash cam. And motion detection is going to be a case of when you set that up, anything that moves in front of it will start it recording. That's all fairly straightforward. Remote control, which means you can use it from the app, and then you've got the setup menu. So they're the main ones. So let's just go back, and as you can see, I'm just using the up and down buttons to navigate through these, and to get into each one, you press the shoot button. So so what was interesting, the underwater mode, I'm not entirely sure what that does. All it does is it puts a little blue splodge on your screen. I'm assuming it does some sort of motion or color correction, maybe. FPV mode, when you choose that, you've got LCD, FPV, or FPV and LCD. Now, I think what that means is that you can actually use the HDMI output here to be able to use it on, you know, on something like a flying device. And that would mean that the output comes from either the USB or the HD output, and then you could see it through your goggles, and this will tell you whether or not you can actually view it still on the screen, or whether it turns the screen off and only sends the output to that. So that's what I understand that mode is all about. Again, I can play around with these settings at some point, but that's my basic understanding. Let's quickly go into the setup. So the setup, again, lots of options here. So you've got, for example, the resolution. You can do 4K at 24 frames a second, 2K at 30, 1080 at 60, 30, 720 at 120, 720 again, and the usual. Basically nothing different, exactly the same as you would get on something like a GoPro Hero 4 Silver in terms of the modes that you can do. You know, and again, it's the 4K footage is at 24 frames a second, not at 30, which is a bit of a shame, but nothing particularly different about that. You've got loop recording option, the field of view you can set, you've got off at the moment. Interesting that off is an option. Then you've got wide, then you've got middle, then you've got narrow, and I'll do some demonstrations of those probably in the video coming up. WDR is on and off. I'm not entirely sure what that is. And now I should mention, the reason I'm saying I'm not entirely sure is that while you do get a manual, that manual only really tells you how to turn it on and how to get it actually filming. It's not comprehensive at all in terms of each setting. Now I have looked online briefly for that, but I haven't found anything too detailed on it as yet, so it may be a case of going to people who have tried it out and getting some information about that. We've got gyro sensor, so I believe that is for if you're using it as a dash cam. So if you have an impact, that it will record upon that impact. So it will sense a shock, and then it will actually start recording. We've got audio options, audio on, audio off. We've got volume, we've got timestamp, TV mode. TV mode is NTSC or PAL. The on-screen display mode, on or off, that's going to be, so that's whether or not you see all the detail when you're filming. Video file format, standard MP4 or MOV, I always go for MP4. Bitrate, high, medium or low, I should certainly set that to high. Double file, that means that it will actually save 2 of everything, so you get a backup, which is an interesting option. Power on record, so in other words, that means if you press your record button, it will power up and just start recording. That's a yes or no option. Image size, this is for the photos, so you've got up to 4K, so it's actually defaulting to 12 megapixels rather than 16. Now whether that's because it's doing upscaling for 4K, quite possible I think, and that would have to be tested out. Quality, fine, normal, economy, I shall certainly be having fine on that. Sharpness settings, normal, strong, soft, so you can play around with that. You've got white balance, you've got colour, you've got ISO, auto, so you can actually manually set your ISO. That's quite good. EV levels, that's again, these are all little functions that you would not expect to necessarily see in a camera of this kind of price bracket. How good they are, how useful they are, and how detailed they are to actually use in the field is yet to be seen. But I think again, having the option to play around with those kind of settings is something that I would not expect. Now RAW is interesting, so it suggests it can shoot in RAW footage. Which again is something that you really wouldn't expect from a camera that's $120. Distortion correction, so that's going to be fisheye, so this has actually got that set to on. License number set. Okay, license number set, not entirely sure what that means. Date and time is obvious. Auto power off. Keypad tone, as you can hear the little beeps in the background. A light set, so that's how bright the lights are, I believe. Oh no, actually, sorry, light set, that's how many flash when you're actually recording. You can see you've got a light there, light at the top, and then you've got the ones on the front as well, so it's which ones actually will flash. Screensaver options, frequency, so it's going to be a 50 or a 60 hertz, set to 60. You can rotate, so that will flip the image upside down if you're holding the camera upside down. A logo watermark on your images, your language obviously. Then you've got your Wi-Fi password, SSID and password, so it comes with a default password, I believe, of 12345678, so you probably want to change that so people can't get onto the camera. And you can also change the name of the SSID, because I believe at the moment, yeah, it's M20 659 blah 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 blah, so it's quite a long convoluted SSID, so you could have something more personal. Then you've got the options to delete footage, format the card, put it back to default settings, and the version number. So I'm looking at version 1.26, so that's July 2006, so it may be a case of a newer firmware is out that I should get on. So again, I haven't gone into detail of what each one actually does, but it's just interesting to see that this really does have a comprehensive set of menus. And again, I really do like the fact that the screen, it's very detailed, very bright, very vibrant. And again, if I just come out of it and I just hold my hand in front of the camera, there we go, you can see it's quite detailed. It's a very nice little TFT screen there. It's quite impressive. So certainly I would say almost on par with the Hero camera. Obviously the screen is not touchscreen. You can't do that, but I've kind of maintained that I'm not a big fan of touchscreens on these sort of cameras, because they're so small anyway that they can be a bit fiddly. Sometimes you've got wet hands, stuff like that. Capacitive touch is always a little bit fickle when you're not using just your finger in the dry, so it's quite nice to see. And that menu system, it's not perfect. You press twice, you go into the menu, but then you go up and down, and then you've got an engage button, which is the shutter button to get you into the menu. So if you do that, you'll change to photo mode. Nice and simple. So all in all, there are the menus, and obviously the most important thing now is to get it out and see what sort of footage this thing comes out with. Okay, so before we go out in the field, I wanted to show you the rig that I'm going to be using. I am going to be pitting this against the big dog, the GoPro Hero 5. Now people will say, well, that's a bit of an unfair comparison. That's a £96 camera compared to a £350 camera. Yes, absolutely. But the reason for doing that is that if this camera comes out anywhere near the footage that this does, then for many people, they're going to be saying to themselves, well, what the hell would I spend £350 on this one when I could spend £350 on that and get 3 of them? So I think it's quite important to do that. So and it may come out that it's really not that good. And if that is the case, then what I might do is get the Hero Session 1 that I've got and put it against that one. That's obviously a cheaper camera and a slightly softer image, not quite as detailed, but again, I just want to do that. It will be a very good test, I think, to see how it performs. Now the rig that I was intending to use was basically, this is the plastic frame that it comes with. I've actually slid the bracket that comes on the front of there. That's the little belt clip bracket that's come out of it, so you can actually see what you're doing. But I just wanted to demonstrate basically the way this slots together is a little iffy in my opinion. You sort of slide it on, this clip here then pushes forward. Now every time I do that it turns the camera on because it presses the on button. Not a major issue, turn it back off, but a little bit niggly there. Once it's in place, don't get me wrong, that's nice and solid, quite happy with that, but I just wonder how long it's going to be before that clip actually starts becoming a little bit, you know, mangled, and certainly the plastic that you're sliding against, you know, that's also scraping every time. So not ideal there, not the end of the world by any means. Now, as I mentioned before, there's two tripod threads here and here, so my intention is, of course, you've got this dual tripod bracket, I'm just going to mount it on top of that. Now the problem with doing that is that when I actually tried to do it, screw that down, okay, I've hit the end of the thread, I've hit the end of the thread. And unfortunately this is something that SJCAMs haven't really thought through, because it turns out that basically the thread on the bottom of this, as well as in this, which is their tripod mount bracket that comes with it as well, is so unbelievably shallow that on a standard tripod mount that's got any decent amount of thread anyway, it doesn't actually fit on it properly. To demonstrate that, let me just grab my little Gorilla Grip from Jobby. And again, you know, that's not exactly a lot of thread, but if I actually put that in, it goes all the way to the bottom, but I've hit that thread depth now. So even if I were to get a screwdriver on that and really tighten it up, I can't twist it into anything more, so I end up with a complete loose bracket. So a little bit of a downside there. I think unfortunately that's just that's one of those things where they haven't done their measurements, or they haven't done their standard measurements. There's probably some tripods that you've got that will work fine, and to be honest it's not exactly a major problem for me, because all I'm going to do is I'm going to get these washers, stick them on there, grab the camera, and hopefully that will give me just about enough thread, there we go, to be able to tighten that down nicely, like so. So that's the plan. There we go, we've got our dual camera setup. Lenses are reasonably the same height, so it should be a reasonable sort of side-by-side comparison. So we'll get out in the field and we'll see how they compare. So out onto a nice bright sunny day, onto the bike we go, and left hand side we have the SJCAM M20, right hand side we have the GoPro Hero 5, and hopefully this will give us a good opportunity to see the difference between the two. Both running 1080, 60 frames a second. GoPro I've turned off the Pro Tune and I've turned off the stabilization, so hopefully it'll be a, you know, a nice kind of general comparison between the two. Now immediately we can see that the GoPro is actually slightly kind of, well, I'd say washed out. That's not true, it's probably more colour accurate. The richness of the greens and the blues on the MJ20 is a little bit fake, I would say. The contrast is probably a little bit too high, but you know, there are some settings, I could do some tweaks, I could do some testing. The main things that I tend to look for when I'm comparing cameras like this are, you know, artifacts, you know, how good the bit rate is, how good the recording is. At the moment, as far as I can tell, M20 very good, very reasonable. Obviously colours are quite important as well, and more importantly, I think personally the thing that really sets a camera out from, you know, from a good cheap camera to a bad cheap camera is how it copes with that transition of light to dark. So throughout the bits of footage that I show you over this, just take a look at how when I point it at the sun and then I go to a dark area, especially when I go behind trees where it goes dark and then I point the camera upwards and we come out of the trees and it's light, it's how it copes with that. Does it go blocky, you know, does it burn out? And I have to admit, from the footage that I've seen so far, I think it's absolutely fantastic. I think for the money, you know, again, 96 quid, you know, more like £100 once you've paid for shipping and taxes and stuff like that, but you know, that's 3 times cheaper than that GoPro. And while the GoPro is 100% the better camera, and I will, you know, stand by that, it is a fantastic image shot, this is a very good value for money camera. You know, all the equipment you get, all of the accessories, the waterproof housing, everything like that, you know, you've got a lot in that package already, plus you've got a camera which can give you some really nice decent 1080 at 60 frames a second shots. So far so good, very worthwhile the investment, I think, in that respect. Now what I'll do is I'll move on to the bit where I do a bit of an audio comparison, just so we can hear how good stroke bad the two cameras come across. So this is the moment where I'm going to just talk into the camera and hopefully you can get an indication of whether you can hear me or not. This is the bit where I'm actually going into the wind. I imagine there's quite a lot of wind noise on both cameras, but it'll be interesting to see how both cope with it. In a moment I'll turn around again and I'll get some footage of me talking when we're not going into the wind. Okay, so this is now me behind the camera and the wind is behind me, so in theory I'm blocking the wind out. It'll be interesting to see what you can hear through either of these cameras at the moment. I know for a fact the GoPro Hero 5 is doing some compensation, and it does a lot of work in terms of the actual getting rid of wind. Whether the SJCAM does anything like that will yet to be seen. My understanding is the microphone is actually on the side of it, on the right hand side, so if I move my mouth to the right hand side, that'll probably be louder than it was over here. So no real surprise there, the GoPro Hero 5 has much better audio than the M20, but you know, that's something that GoPro have invested a lot of money on this more recent camera. You know, it's got more microphones, it's designed to do that. The M20, it's got one microphone. You can tell it's actually a very quiet microphone. It's nice to see it doesn't pick up a huge amount of wind noise, and the wind noise that it does pick up, it doesn't drown out the vocals. You know, I am moving, let's not forget that, so it's always going to be a little bit harder to hear my voice because I'm moving, because there is that wind noise. But all in all, exactly what I expected really. A camera which has got a decent image quality and a low price tag with lots of accessories is going to suffer in certain elements, and I think, to be honest, I'd rather it suffer in elements like the audio than in those other areas anyway. What I do like, however, is the colours. I do like the way this deals with the lights and the darks, especially if you look at the sun there. We go under this bridge, when I swing around, look at how quickly it copes with getting the picture image back after the burnout disappears. And you can see it does it very well, if not better than the GoPro. So all in all, with the bike ride, very good. Now we'll move into the car. So out into the Subaru we go, and much the same in terms of the side-by-side, but what I'm going to do in a moment is I'm going to zoom up the shot from both cameras so you can see them in full screen, because obviously we didn't see that in the bike ride footage. This is just whilst we're putting along through my little village, and I'm on my way to a little stretch of road where I can open up the taps for a couple of seconds. We'll take an audio comparison, whether you can hear engine noise, road noise, everything like that, how good the audio between the two is. So first of all, let's zoom up the SJCAM. And for comparison, let's watch that very same scene, but through the eyes of the GoPro Hero 5. Back to side by side now, so when I open up the taps over the hill, I'm going to go through the two microphones, and we can see what the footage and the audio is like between the two cameras whilst we're doing a little bit of speed over the hill. So what will be interesting to see is what kind of engine noise we get through it. Here we go, let's go. So that was a little section that I like to just do a quick blat on. Turn around and go back again. So hopefully that gives you an indication between, you know, road noise, engine noise, and also the vocals that you get from it. Not great in terms of the M20, very quiet, but I think what's important not to get tripped up on with action cameras is that often is the way the footage is the thing that's most important. It's sometimes you'll find that audio just doesn't come into it anyway, and the whole point of having these little cameras is to get them into places where you couldn't get a full-size video camera with a decent microphone, etc. So don't worry too much about that. So let's draw some conclusions on this SJCAM M20. Overall, fantastic little camera. I'm very happy with the picture quality, really happy with the number of accessories you get with it, and I think if you're one of those people who's thinking about buying an action camera but doesn't know whether they can justify the cost of buying something like a Hero, this is a good starting point. The point being that you would be able to have it, you'd be able to use it. If it doesn't get used, you haven't spent a ridiculous amount of money, but if you do use it, you're going to get some really nice footage with it. If you use it more than you expected to, you've also then got the option of upgrading to a Hero, and you're not just throwing this camera away because it came with all of these little Hero mounts. You know, you've got the thing that you can put on the bike, you've got all the little accessories, the little stick-on bits. All of those things can be used with a Hero product, and because of that, that means you're not losing your entire investment. You're just gaining a better camera, and you've got some accessories that would probably cost you 20-30 quid if you bought them from GoPro in the first place. It's not without its faults. There's a couple of niggly little issues with this camera. I mentioned the tripod mount. In a moment you're going to notice a building on the right hand side, and as we go past it, look at the left hand image and you'll notice it jumps. There we go. Now the reason for that is that in default mode, for no known reason, it's got loop recording set to 3 minutes, which means that every time you hit record on your movies, that means that you get a 3-minute video and then it moves on to the next one. No major problem with that. You know, it's perfectly usable. I haven't really had any flaws with that on other cameras. What's weird about this one is that it adds the last second of the video before to the first part of the next video, and what that means when you're doing stuff like I've done here on side-by-side comparisons is for some unknown reason you suddenly get yourself out of sync. It's also very annoying if you were shooting you know, something like a wedding or something like that, or a continuous shot, because you'd have to edit out that 1 second every single time it came around. So just bear that in mind. It's very easy to change that setting. As soon as I realised it, I jumped into the settings, turned loop mode off, boom, that disappeared. And again, it's very nice that it does have loop mode as an option, so I can't really fault it on that. It's something that's worth mentioning again. I think this really does have a lot of features and a lot of options that you just did not used to get on cameras of this kind of price point. I like the screen. I think it's a vibrant coloured screen. I like the options. I like the fact it isn't actually a touch screen, so it makes life a little bit easier in that respect. Even when I've been setting up my GoPro, the Hero 5, I found that a little bit annoying, the touchscreen. I'm one of those people that was actually quite a fan of the button push. It's not to say the touchscreen is not useful in certain areas, but a lot of the time, sometimes it doesn't take the touches that you expect it to. It's very small real estate, so I think that's actually a plus point for cameras that don't have touchscreens at the moment. But, you know, it's one of those things that you get used to very quickly. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to switch over to a time-lapse that I did. I did the time-lapse on both cameras, so I can do a comparison here. And basically, you can just enjoy that whilst I thank you for watching this video. Hopefully, it's been of use to you. Apologies, this is probably way late down the line. The SJCAM M20 has been out for a while. I know Gearbest have been sending them out to pretty much everyone under the sun who's got a YouTube channel. And this is, of course, as always, been a very long video, but hopefully it's been a comprehensive one enough for people to decide whether or not they would like to buy one. And if you would like to, then there is a link to Gearbest where you can buy one in the links below. Thanks for watching.